This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders. Northampton Saints have always lived in the middle, where neutrals love Quins and hate Sarries, where regardless of form fans fear Tigers and underestimate Sale, where TV cheers Chiefs and forgets Falcons. Northampton Saints have always sat in the centre for most of their 144-year history. England's middlemost club has existed for so long in the zone in between. Champions of England just once. Over the last 12 years, Northampton have finished 4th or 5th, a remarkable 9 times, yet higher just once. For most modern fans' entire lives, Saints have always been a team to set your watch by. If you're doing better than them, it's a good season. If you're doing worse than them, welcome to the middle. Then, sometime around Christmas, we all returned from the World Cup and had a glance at the Premiership table and saw this. With the regular season now concluded for just the second time in their history, Northampton Saints have finished on top. A team no longer in the middle, Saints now head into the playoffs, top seed, top dog, and building on a top 4 finish in Europe. And whilst normally this sort of situation feels like a mystery or miracle, instead the answer to how this happened feels so simple. Northampton Saints have become one of the best attacking teams in the world. And yet their journey to get here, to turn those tries into results, took so much more. So, how did Saints transform themselves into the kings of sex? What are the secrets to their sublime season? And can they go all the way in the coming weeks? Whilst Northampton becoming a powerhouse of passing has come as a surprise to many, for those who followed Saints closely over the last few years, they're probably looking at this season as less of a revolution and more of a accumulation of themes and ideas and ambitions that have been growing amongst the club for some time. It all began back in 2018 when, after a season decidedly below the middle, Northampton brought in highly rated Kiwi coach Chris Boyd. Boasting one of the fastest growing CVs of excellence in the game, Boyd was admired worldwide for his ability to build a team around their attack. His crisp, clean, all-out style had taken Tonga to their greatest ever win, New Zealand under-20s to a Junior World Cup, and the underdog Hurricanes to 2 Super Rugby finals, including their first ever Super Rugby title. His job in Northampton was simple. Do that. Do with the Canes. Get us scoring tries and get us winning games. It turned out it wasn't so simple. When Boyd announced his intention to return to New Zealand in 2022, he was coming towards the end of a 3rd season, finishing in those 4th, 5th positions once again, having checked just one of those 2 boxes. Northampton under Boyd scored more tries, more than anyone else in the league quite frequently, but they didn't win more games. Northampton's matches had become high-scoring shootouts, opposition defences breached and Saints defence optional. The team occupying their usual central spot on a log, just with more style than they had before. And yet, whilst Boyd never cracked the code entirely himself, he remains a critical piece of this puzzle. Over his 4 seasons, Boyd put enormous emphasis on not signing guys to fit his system, but developing their own talent to play to the Saints' identity. Under Boyd's watch, Lewis Bloodlam, Alex Coles, Tommy Freeman, Roy Hutchison, Fraser Dingwall, Alex Mitchell, and most of all, the man, the myth, the moustache. The face seen in 1,000 lockets, Lieutenant Furbank, grew from rookies to capped internationals and into key parts of this team. But perhaps more importantly, he also grew his young, recently retired assistant coaches, Phil Dowson and Sam Vesti, into guys ready to now take the Premiership by storm. The day he handed in his notice, which is something I presume you have to do as a Premiership head coach, I presume it's the same thing, you just kind of go to your boss and go, here I am, I'll be off in a month. Boyd made it very clear to the board. Don't launch a search. Don't start headhunting. The men to replace me are already in the building. And so, putting their trust in him, Saints promoted Dowson to Director of Rugby and Vesti to Head Coach, duo in charge of on-field operations at a club for the first time in their careers. And initially, they changed nothing, carrying Boyd's IP over with only minor tweaks. Northampton have been the Premiership top try scorers for 3 straight seasons now, so if it ain't broke, why ask George Furbank to fix it? Except, the thing is, maybe a few things did need breaking. Unbelievably, right, playing the same tactics got Dowson and Vesti almost exactly the same results as Boyd. Lots of tries scored, lots of tries conceded, 4th place finish. So they decided something had to change. It wasn't good enough anymore for them to emulate their mentor. Vesti and Dowson had to become their own coaches. Despite his promotion, Vesti remains an attack coach at heart, and his philosophy on play, on rugby, on the game, is pretty simple. There's always space on a rugby field. It's impossible for every blade of grass to be covered, and it's his team's job to find it and get the ball into that space. Sometimes it looks like this. Spotting Tigers have left Shilcock in the backfield, Saints identify the space and overload the blind side. There's one less man in the main line, so let's attack there. Stewart gambles on it going wide and it allows Ram to hit a line and put Langdon into space, with Shilcock coming up at a terrible time. The space is now behind, so Langdon, the hooker, on absurd form all season, bursts into it, exploits it to score a try. But sometimes it looks more like this. God King George Furbank spots this cross kick is on, but instead of dropping it onto his own boot, he identifies Dingwall. Flat here is in a better position, which ties Daly in and allows Slightholme to dawdle over unopposed. It's the straightforward, the space that presents itself that you look out for every day on a rugby field. However, whilst their identification of that ground, those gaps, is exceptional, this year Northampton have become so good at manipulating it in their favour. Tom James here fires an absolute seed for Dingwall. It's so flat and yet float, allowing Dingwall to select whether he wants to go unders or overs based on how the defence is reacting, how they're setting up. And he decides going to go overs. And so, expecting a carry, Farrell and Tompkins both push to him, meaning this lovely flick pass takes both of them out of the game. In trying to remain connected, Lucio Cinti in the 13 channel has left a huge gap on his outside, and as he rushes to make amends, Odendahl's little nudge here on Tompkins cuts the RG off entirely from his inside support. These drifting lines from the wing and fullback force their opposite numbers to mark up and copy them, allowing this space that had been right out on the far touchline to now move into the centre, move to be around Cinti, allowing for this. It's an overlap in the middle of the field. Cinti against Smith and Freeman, pass timed perfectly to put the blindside winger wrapping around late through the hole and over for the try. Vesti has built brilliantly on everything they did well under Boyd. There are 4 main differences between Northampton of this season and last, and whilst 3 of those are tactical, the first, perhaps most important, came behind the scenes. For whilst Vesti was working on the tactics, Phil Dowson went to Squarespace. An old school Kiwi guy, Boyd had written all the tactics and plays and all of that on bits of paper, passengers hanged them out, bits of scrap paper in the changing rooms. Dowson, on the other hand, decided this season he wasn't going to do that. He was going to take a new approach, and he built a website. With Squarespace, it was so quick and easy to knock up into a full, tasty, delicious website that he can eat. All the players can eat it. They're able to dive in, to easily check information built for them. With Dowson able to drop videos in to explain moves, tables of various plays they might be running for the opposition, links to check for previous season's results, images, all sorts. The whole thing formatted so simply and easy to integrate and send out with their mailing list. He can send to every player so simply. No specialist knowledge required to set this up, and online and ready to be sent out in, a mere hour, if that, yet simple to update regularly and often whenever the playbook required tweaks. And if you want to do the same and follow Phil's example, build your own beautiful website quickly and easily, then please head to the link in the description and use the offer code SquidRugby to save yourself some money on that purchase. The other 3, however, were indeed outlined on the website. Presuming it exists, I'm pretty sure it did, and has huge impact on their game. First of all, and this may come as a surprise to some, Northampton now kick more of the ball than any other team in the Premiership. If the goal of the game is to find space, to find spots of grass without burly blokes on them, it makes sense that an awful lot of the time that space is going to be behind the main line. And so, Northampton boot it. There's more than a whiff of the old French system. The likes of Finsmith and Furbank looking to turn the fullback, find grass, make the ball bounce, hoping to hurry fullbacks under pressure into returning loose kicks from which they can launch counterattacks, be it immediate on first phase or off subsequent phases with a defence not set properly. And it's in those situations, in turn, that Vesti can deploy another building aspect of their attack. Just as in that earlier example finished by Langdon, Saints have adopted lowering the beats painted a stretch formation that France was so good at for so long. Being a team that kicks long from open field positions so often, defences, as with Shilcock in that example, have no choice but to leave men in the backfield to cover those kicks, and this often leaves defenders in the main line covering that extra inch or so further. And so, just as they did with Cinti, Saints asked them to defend a mile instead. This is a perfect example. Madavesi here deliberately overthrows the line-out to get the ball into that crash-up central position as quickly as possible, hence giving Newcastle's pack as little time as possible to fall to work around to this far side of the ruck. As Ludlam or Ludlow carries on second phase, no Falcons have folded to this side, but that's okay because it's just Zavala and Hutchinson over here. They're quite tight to the ruck as well. There's no real threat out wide. Yet, by the time the ball has come out, both have drifted wider, setting further apart with other other players coming in late and filling the gaps. The team have taken position so last second, they're still drifting out as Zavala catches the ball, and it makes them impossible to defend. Litchfield straightens and hits a gap, bursting right through, with James running the classic line that every good scrum half's ever run. If you scrum half and you've never run this line, you are shit. I'm sorry. Name one good scrum half who's never run this line. You can't. Literally all of them do it all the time, all game long. This is a regular feature of Saints play, the way they only take shape as the ball is leaving the ruck, allowing them to set based on the defence rather than vice versa. There's no way for the opposition to react. Odendahl here positions himself on the outside of Crowley, allowing him to skip round and get a dominant carry before Smith calls the ball out incredibly flat next phase, stretched so wide that these defenders here are broadly redundant. They're not marking anyone. However, the risk of this approach is sometimes things aren't set in time, but Smith identifies that as he got so good at this season and takes it in. Play getting a little bit looser, but it's still going so wide and so fast. After it gets a touch messy, they just go for a few phases to get a front foot, carries being made before setting back to the stretch. The centres here drifting out last second to change the picture once again. The drop off to Dingwall sending him back to within 5 metres of the try line. With just a minimal clear out, Moon then runs a dummy line to hold the forwards as Smith begins tight and hits Nova's line, allowing James's brilliant pass to take out Tyg. Things get loose from here thanks to a great read from Munster, but instead of taking the tackle, Northampton keep the ball alive because they're all flooding around, running such great support, even when they're going backwards, and it allows them to keep the ball alive until they're back on the front foot, never accepting a backwards ball if they don't have to, especially in the 22. You don't want to let the defence get on top. Coles crashes it up, buying the team now time and momentum that allows the centres to set. Laws here doesn't have anyone as tip on, but instead lifts it behind him to Dingwall. Both are fixed on fixing, taking it right up the line. Dingwall changing from an inside line to a boot runner last second. Craig Casey here jams in, goes for the big read, ignoring Odendahl, allowing the centre to hit the line, set up the try for Ram. The phrase normally goes the other way, but Northampton are so good at earning the right to go tight. It's their wide play that allows them to open up these kind of overlaps in tight midfield situations by stretching a defence right out and winning these collisions and getting these offloads in, which leads us into Northampton's second big off-season shift. Last year, whilst they were fantastic once they did get going forward, Saints were amongst the worst sides in Europe at actually generating that momentum. Whilst their gain line percentage was average, Northampton finished bottom of the Prem for dominant carries, which just measures whether the ball carrier actually makes ground post-contact, whether they go forward, backwards, or just stay where they are, regardless of where the gain line itself is. They might have been able to get players up to the gain line through fancy passing bullshit, but the reality was, once they got into contact, they were being smoked and losing collisions. So, in order to counter this, Dowson and Vesti challenged their S&C team to bulk up every single player in their squad. Where Boyd had conditioned his team for pace and dynamism, his prodigies recognised this wasn't New Zealand. In England, to play without power is tantamount to only playing half the game. Every single player in the Saints' wider squad gained weight, muscle mass during the off-season, and it benefited them enormously. Suddenly, Saints were winning collisions. They hadn't put on enormous weight, but just enough to make a difference, particularly in the backs, jumping from 11th to 3rd in the dominant carry percentage and giving them a clear plan B, a power game now possible. This was unlocked by their game management. With no need to play at 1,000 miles an hour, Finn Smith and Alex Mitchell, their halfbacks, have really matured as players. Smith has become so much more patient, always aware of the bigger picture. He's become just a brilliant player this season, whilst Mitchell has transformed from a lively bastard who looks world-class to those watching Flats and Tops on a Sunday night, but perhaps less well-rounded to those who watch the actual game, to, well, the best scrum half in the Premiership. Since its elevation to England and the starting 15, Mitchell's box kicking has come on enormously, and suddenly having an incredibly strong kicking game has unlocked a layer in the sport for him. Now with a complete tool shed, he's become so much better able to assess a situation and hence use his vision and running game, which were always incredibly strong, when appropriate, rather than forcing them in moments where they aren't on, as was the case 2 or 3 years ago. His decision making has just improved enormously for having a kicking game that is up to world-class standards. And whilst it's most evident in the decisions he makes around halfway, it balances out around the full width of the field. Here, for instance, Mitchell resists a half gap and trusts his attack to go forward, but more importantly, forces the prop in front of him, Mornay Smith, to keep working. Just watch this guy. The sheer raw effort makes him easy for Ardman's own 9 to step, taking the gap and going through to score. The hole Mitchell resisted is bigger than the one that actually opened, but the newfound patience in his game allowed him to use the prop's momentum against him a couple of phases later, knowing this was the easier, the better one to exploit, the one who's less likely to be caught as he's going over the line. Likewise, their alternate 9, Tom James, has been exceptional all season, filling largely the same role superbly. Here he resists the gap on the blind side and absolutely fires the ball at Dingwall. Northampton sets so wide off the breakdown that, much like Smith in the last example, Saracens' pack are constantly running laterally and as such making side-on tackles. They go through a few more phases. Jamie George rushes up thinking it's bloody Christmas Day and has an opportunity hence to smash the opposition fly off, but instead sets himself too tight, finding Coles in his stocking, waltzing in for a try. However, the third change represented perhaps the biggest shift in their game. At the end of last season, Northampton let long-term defence coach Ian Vass go and brought in man with the most northern-sounding name in the world, Lee Radford. Unsurprisingly, fresh from Rugby League. Northampton last season might have scored the most tries of any team in the Prem, but they also were second for tries conceded. The side fully aware that if they want to move out the middle, they'll need to forget at least half of their you score 4, we'll score 5 mindset. Radford's job was twofold. 1, identify what the hell was wrong with their defence, and 2, work out a way for it to link up with Vesti's attack. Saints last season were incredibly vulnerable post-turnover. As their attack was so intricate, it took longer to transition into defence than any other team in the league, resulting in players being out of position regularly and conceding a disproportionate number of tries off stolen balls. Radford's prognosis was seemingly quite simple. Forget line speed. Where Saints of past flew up in applied pressure, under their new system the sole goal was to remain connected, always remain together as a line. Unlike a Jacques Nienaber or Sean Edwards system, Radford has built a defence unconcerned about prompting opposition errors, or about pushing them backwards, but instead about surviving long passages of attack. It's a defence designed to be durable, to last forever, survive no matter how long you go on for. Because the defence is so linked up, connected, with nobody flying up, it negates the need for a massive box-style catch-up defence, and so makes it incredibly hard to find someone ever out of position. As such, this leaves huge numbers on their feet and able to contest the breakdown, which in turn allows the defence to win turnovers and hence feed the attack, whilst the stretch formation slides into defensive formation so much easier now than it did in past, because the system wants players covering the full width of the field on both strands of the game. Which ultimately leads us to how Northampton have been so successful, so dangerous this season. We often see teams build success off the foundation of scrum, defence, set piece, kicking game, and then bolt an attack on afterwards once they hit the higher levels, something Saracens, Leicester have done in the Premiership, and countless other teams worldwide. Saints have inverted this pyramid, tipping it upside down, an attacking team who worked out the flaws in the rest of their game and reverse engineered a balanced game plan. Their new kicking strategy feeds their attack. Their new physicality feeds their attack. Their new defence feeds their attack. It's an arrow pointing all the way up, right towards the try line, where Boyd put focus on playing with the ball. Vesti and Dowson have taken a more holistic approach that's improved their biggest strength by it not being their only strength. This is then underscored again by the continuation of another key Boyd theme. Young players just improving all the time and faith being put in them. Finn Smith has gone from an electric talent to an all-round exceptional 10. Ollie Slightholme has become one of the most dangerous players in the league out of nowhere. And Tommy Freeman has evolved from serious talent to serious player. He's so good. And then there's that little-known youngster, Courtney Laws, playing some of the best rugby of his career at age 35. Northampton have created a system that players seem to enjoy, buy into, and enhance on a week-to-week basis, and it's one that could take them all the way. For 2 generations, Northampton Saints have been a team to set your watch by. If you finish above Northampton, you're having a good season. If you finish below, maybe less so. Yet, in 2024, it seems everyone is stuck on the lower end of that yardstick, against a team fulfilling potential it's had for generations. For most of their 144-year history, Northampton Saints have existed in the middle. Yet, in just a few weeks' time, they have a unique chance to change that. They give themselves a day where they're genuinely, undeniably, right at the top. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been quite a while since we covered the Premiership, so it's good to be back. It's good to be doing more club rugby stuff. Speaking of, we've got the European final coming up next week, so we'll be reviewing that, looking over that in detail in the following week. Then there's plenty more to come around that. We're going to do a follow-up to the Scrum video, which was filmed in Northampton at Franklin's Gardens itself. Please have a look at that. Have a look at the Readers of Rugby 24. We've got loads of stuff around Hardwick Pollard. All sorts. Please have a look around. Poke around. We've also been doing a podcast covering the 2007 Rugby World Cup. We have just covered the final. We've looked at the final. We're doing a wrap-up. So please go back. We've got episodes on every single game from the 87, the 2011, and now the 2007 Rugby World Cup. So we'll be starting a new series before too long. In the meantime, I hope you have a lovely period of time until I see you next. And I hope it involves plenty of Monopoly.
If you don't want to miss the best moments from the Gallagher Premiership, subscribe now.